And how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, man. Thank you. Big
Awesome.
fan of yours. So
Awesome.
this is great. I've been trying to get this interview for like a year, so I'm glad to talk to you.
Oh my gosh, so cool.
So I wanted to get started with, I mean, this is one of the best films of last year. So when you were starting to write the script, when you carried writing this character of Naru, how much of it was on the page, and how much of this character changed once you got Amber on board and met her and got to see her kind of energy?
Interesting question. I mean, I would say it's 100% on the page and then 100% what she was able to do with it. She I love underdog stories. I love sports movies. I'm not a sports person. This movie, this character is more me than any other character I've directed, and the story is straight from my heart. And Patrick, the writer, really laid out all those elements on the page. That said, nothing can prepare. I mean, it's one idea, one thing to have the concept. I mean, I was there's a few things. Amber, a thing that is not in the page, that came from a conversation between Amber and I, but was delivered in a way that I never could have expected, is the end of the movie. Like literally the end when she defeats the Predator, and lets out this like primal scream. It's a war cry. It's a Comanche war cry, but it feels like this this massive cathartic release and an fu, that just comes from pure emotion. That I just, every time I watch it I get chills, because it doesn't feel like a performance of a beat. It feels like I'm someone is going through a thing. And it just so happens that she was terribly sick throughout the filming of that whole sequence, and this was one of the last things we did. So it was it literally is like her just like letting it out. So uh yeah, I mean, she brought immeasurable things to it that it's one thing to read something that is so much scene description, and it's another thing to see a performance and capture so much emotion and physicality, and allowing us to be in the head, analyzing the all those things, without words, so often without words, so um it was a great little alchemy between us.
Absolutely. No, she's awesome in the movie. And then so when you are coming up with the concept of when Patrick's writing the script, what was that sort of light bulb that went off in your heads when it was just like we got to take this franchise sort of to the back or to the past rather than the I think the Predator came out 2018, 2017 around that time when that movie's in the present futuristic. So when were you guys like, no, let's take this back to 1719?
Well, the idea of before it was a Predator movie, the the thing that I was stoked on was making a period film, making a intense tale of survival, um, that was where it also infused a science fiction element. That's where my brain was first. I really wanted to tell this underdog story, a coming of age story, a tale of proving, really focusing on that, but not it just being a period piece, being it something more. Um, and thinking that through made me realize I didn't want to just like invent a creature, and I'd invented some creatures before, and in the process of just like, oh, how can we change the design, and what is this about? It's like, is there anything? Could this become a part of something bigger than itself? And then the Predator entered um entered the arena, entered my brain space. I was like, oh my gosh, the Predator is hunting, looking for the strongest, looking for the alpha, and here's this character that I'm already interested in, that is trying to prove themselves as and not seen that way from her peers, not seen her way from her band, and now not going to be even seen that way to even be hunted by the Predator. That was the like, oh my gosh, yes, we could make a special Predator movie. And then remembering the gun from the end of Predator 2, that had a date on it. was like, oh my gosh, this really could feel like an essential and necessary part of that franchise. So that's where we started. Yeah.
Awesome. And so like when you are doing this, because it feels like very accurate to the time period, very accurate to Comanche culture of the time. And then like I mean, you're not just making a Predator film all of a sudden, but you're also making this film about the Comanche where like if you fuck it up, you're not getting a chance. No one's making another movie like this, you know? So like what went into the pre-production process? How much were I think one of your producers was also heavily involved with getting the accuracy right. So what went into your research of like, hey, let's make sure we do this right and make the most badass film possible?
After writing the first treatment, like getting the story out, or for early draft or something, we then reached out to Comanche advisor Juanita Potaponi and Dustin Tamacare, her nephew, to see like, are we even, is this right? Are we doing the right? It was just based on our own research and like, is this seem like the thing? We started working with them, and at that time, they gave us a lot of um, textbooks, and and when I went through them, it was always like the first chapter is this time period, and then we got into the 1800s. Then we got into like the Wild West, um, and very heavily documented in media and written in form, and where there's more written record. But we wanted to set the movie where there was very little written record, especially from the Comanche perspective. A lot of it is from a Western gaze, or European gaze. So or colonial gaze. So it was like, and I can't, I felt like I can't make this movie with just like an advisor and some research and whatever. Like this needs to be, part of the cool of this movie will be how real it is, authentic it is. So, getting a producer, who was Comanche herself, Jane Myers, was like, it couldn't have been done without her, absolutely essential. Not only for, her instincts and her research, and connection to her tribe, and um, to put in the historical accuracy, but also just for her instincts, for everything, for even the genre moments, that there be, her voice represented in all the fabric of the whole thing, and her friends and her family and everything that's informed her is like that perspective is infused in all the little decisions of the movie. So even like a genre moment, like Amber Nadu, the character Nadu, whistling to bait the predator at the end when she's in front of Big Beard, that came from Jane. We were wrestling with Amber's performance in that scene, like how can we make this cool? And not just from a delivery perspective, but what it just feels like it was missing something. And Jane's like, she should whistle because in Comanche, and I think Southern Plains in particular, the tribes, whistling at night was a big, like, you do not whistle at night because that will invoke evil spirits, or a demon can come get you, or is bad. And so that became this cool little genre moment and a great character moment and necessary piece of that scene, that comes from these instincts that I certainly don't have, and it's so gnarly that Amber refused to do the whistle. So she just mouths it, and then we were shooting, our AD did the whistle, and then later, we had someone else, in the sound design, doing whistle, and because it's such a, um, sensitive thing. So yeah, having Jane, and having the movie be authentic, was primary,
Yeah,
in our
no, it
focus.
came out beautifully. And then, like, I had to ask, okay, I love the action in this movie, and then you have these, obviously the bear scene, and then in the ending, like, because you have to conceive of, like, you're dropping breadcrumbs throughout how Naru is prepared to fight the predator at the end. So, how long did that sort of end scene sort of take the concert, get from concept to realization, where you're like, this, or like you can go a million different ways, but so can you just break down like what was the process behind that final scene?
Yeah, I went through lots of different iterations, especially because location wise, we were like, could it be here? Could it be there? This location, we had a whole thing devised based on the way the geography of this location was, and then that falls through. And then we went to this place, and the sort of the tent poles of it all were her using the terrain against him, the terrain that she knows so well, um, that we see her learning on screen, not just because we assume it, that we actually see her um and dealing with a mud pit at some point and then turning that against him, and then figuring out the way to kill it is not just to face it head on, to get at it from the side, and uh disarming it step by step, to, like, everything wanted to feel like, what would you do when you're overwhelmed, um to systematically take this thing down and turn its own weapons against him, and by the way, things that Arnold figures out at some point as well in his own journey, but and then what was a key to me was that there be clever and be veracity, like I didn't want to just be like, and she's so smart that she devises this trap. I wanted that to absolutely be there. And also what must be there is her and her buddy, her little Suddy, her dog, working together. Needed that in this set piece. And then also seeing her doing physical acts of doing some swashbuckle. It's not just that, even thematically, it's not just that she embraces what her mom was giving her and with the flower, like it's like, and she realizes, oh, there, that what I shouldn't have shunned that from my life, that I should embrace that, but also she becomes physically more and more badass, like that she embrace. It's both things are necessary. It's not just, you don't need that, you need this, or you don't need this, you need, it's like, no, you need both. You need to rise to the occasion and muster all that you can physically, but also be smart, so that was a huge part of, and then making sure the predator moved and was ferocious in ways that we don't often see it move as well.
Yeah, so, no, the movie is so smart. I was just rewatching it this morning, and
Oh, cool.
but like I do want to ask you this, but I don't know how much you're allowed to say. But like, have
Mm.
you had any talks about a follow up? I know there's been so much buzz. People want to see Predator against the samurai, or you can put this in now in different time periods. You basically just reinvented the entire wheel. But what are you allowed to say about that? Have you had sort of internal discussions, or maybe just stuff going on in your head?
Um, not at liberty to say.
I got
But
a follow
yes,
up.
have talked. We from while we were still filming, we were talking about the other things we can do. It would
Yeah,
be
no,
cool.
I mean, this is one of the movies I wish went to theaters because I got to see it like a couple weeks in advance before it premiered. But
Oh,
I just
cool.
wish it was out in theaters so everyone could have seen it. And so many people asked me if the dog survived, so I was just like, you just got to watch it. But but I do have to ask. I love that bear scene. So like,
Yeah.
how I'm not super well versed on the technical terms, but what went into sort of realizing that from a green screen? What's practical? What's obviously the bears? I'm assuming mostly CGI. So, what sort of went into that sort of concept? How long did that sort of take to shoot, and just the whole from the chase to the actual like fight when he's and then the ending, obviously when he bathes himself in blood.
Yeah. Um, that was. I mean, it was all shot on location, so there wasn't really much green screen used, other than. But even then, there's really wasn't. It was sort of shot up in this. We the piece where she's inside the beaver dam. We recreated that. We didn't want to shoot that in the river. Um, uh, so there's the piece where she gets out of the beaver dam. That is in the river and gets into it. That's the beaver dam. But then when we're inside of it, we were in a little pool on the parking lot outside of our stages, and shooting up at the sky. And we had some little furry bear arm to represent the bear coming in. And we did some stuff even on location with a guy in stilts running around. So the interaction with like the river and the water, like all that stuff was usable when we took it into our digital arena. But yeah, and then the bear is all CG. Um, Maybe there's a shot of like the furry arm that we let be practical, but in general. She's there, the set's there, everything's there. It's just that the bear is CG and the predator and the predator as well. Well, when the predator was cloaked, we usually had a mocap performance help dictate, or help guide, and then but obviously he's when cloaked form CG and the blood coming on him is all is all CG. But the sequence was actually initially much larger and needed to come down to be able to afford to do it. And then that's when we figured out the Beaver Dam section was like, oh, there's a way to limit how many VFX shots there will be. And the quality of them, like looking through something and then being more distant, very different than her being in the middle of them fight, interacting. So that box that we were put in helped the movie be cooler because it's more suspenseful, and arguably much better looking than it would have been if we were out in the fray, in the middle of the water, being gnarly to accomplish.
Yeah, no, it's that moment where you realize, oh, this is the real deal. And then so I don't want to keep you too long. So I'll have to, since the Blu-ray is coming out, I wanted to ask you about the alternate opening and I think there's 2 or 3 couple of deleted scenes on there. What can you tease about there? What can you tell us why they were left out of the movie?
Well, all deleted scenes I put commentary over, so I'm explaining things as you see them, which I think is cool. And the alternate opening was when it was in Comanche, because at a certain point early on in the process they were going to be speaking Comanche, and then it shifted into English, which became an unsuccessful idea. And execution was very challenging given all the language stuff that happens throughout the film. So that's part of the execution of it. And there's more of a dynamic established between her and the other tribesmen that were just very the other hunter guys were just, it was a little heavy-handed in what we were trying to accomplish, and setting up things that didn't actually bear fruit throughout the film, and was less focused on her and her brother. That seemed like the thing we really wanted to focus on. And then there's a scene with her and a younger girl that it's the girl that shows up at the end of the movie, and she's there with when Tabe is and shows back with the line in the beginning as well. And there's just a lovely scene between her and this young girl, and then also set up the dirty bow, that she says, don't get your bowstring wet, you got to keep it clean. And then later on, that's why it snaps with the bear sequence. So it had these lovely qualities to it, and then but just ultimately the just sort of getting in the way of the momentum of the movie. And then we have a previs action sequence, which is a treetop chase that was super fun to come up with, and had a great, really cool, I think, clever use of the cut clamp, one of the Predator's weapons. But ultimately, we just could not afford to do that sequence. And I frankly, the execution had to be so perfect for it to not feel outside of the aesthetic of the movie, that I negotiated myself out of out of making it. So I'm happy to have it here on the desk for people to see.
Awesome, man. Well, I can't wait to see it. No, thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate it. This has been awesome.
Likewise, dude. Thank you. Thanks for
Good to
talking
meet
to
you.
me.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Courtney.
Thank you. I'll send you a link soon.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Okay.